Happy afternoon. Today I'm presenting about ectopic pregnancy. My moderator is Dr. Shweta, madam. Ma'am, it is the leading cause of maternal death in the first trimester. Delay in the diagnosis or incorrect treatment can increase the maternal mortality. Abacus was the first to diagnose the ectopic pregnancy. The incidence in general population is 19 per thousand pregnancies, but in ERT it increases by 4%. Next slide, please. It is commonly seen in common sites of ectopic pregnancy are in fallopian tubes, we see 93%, and ampulla 70%, isthmus 12%, in fimbria 11%, and in ovary 3.2%, coronal or interstitial 2.4%, abdominal 1.3%, and in cervical less than 1%. Next slide. It is commonly seen in tubal pregnancy. Etiology is any condition that interferes with tubal transport mechanism or damages the tube will predispose to ectopic pregnancy. The risk factors being PID, history of previous ectopic pregnancy, and infertility of more than or equal to 2 years, pelvic or abdominal surgery, which results in adhesions and interference with normal anatomical structures, and endometriosis, sexually transmitted infections like chlamydia and gonorrhea, and previously failed tubal surgery, such as tubal sterilization or tubal ligation reversal procedures. And next slide. Relative risk like cigarette smoking, which increases by twofold, which increases ectopic pregnancy by twofold, increased maternal age, and multiple sexual partners, which is probably due to STDs, and intrauterine exposure to diethylstilbestrol, which also increases the risk by twofold. Pregnancy with IUCD mainly of progesterone, not routine 380A and all. It is mainly progesterone IUCDs which cause ectopic pregnancy. And in vitro fertilization, ART increases the risk by twofold. Next slide, please. Clinical features, you have to suspect ectopic pregnancy when there is a history of amenorrhea, generally of 5 to 6 weeks, and abnormal vaginal bleeding, like any bleeding that occurs other than normal menstrual bleeding. It will usually scanty or minimal spotting will be seen, and they'll complain of lower abdomen, maybe unilateral or bilateral, and it might be a sudden sharp pain, and it won't respond to painkillers, and it is not relieved by rest. Such type of pain is experienced by ectopic pregnancy. Next is shoulder pain, which is usually seen in case of tubal rupture. Like, and other things are weakness, lightheadedness, and seen in case of ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, ma'am, your voice
Next
is
slide, Shweta.
breaking. Yeah, ma'am, your voice is breaking a little, ma'am.
Ma'am, problem with the net, I think so, ma'am. Now, hello, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, now we can hear you, ma'am.
There was problem with the net, I think so, ma'am.
Okay.
Shall I start, ma'am?
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
Yeah. Diagnosis of ectopic pregnancy. You can diagnose the history by history, the classical triad of amenorrhea, abnormal vaginal bleeding, and abdominal pain will be there. So any fertile women coming with pain or abnormal vaginal bleeding, you should get a one urine pregnancy done for such patient. Then you're going for physical and pelvic examination. And general examination, you have to see for pulse rate and volume, BP, pallor, and peritoneal signs such as guarding, rigidity, and tenderness, rebound tenderness, which all will indicate the possibility of hemoperitoneum. And pelvic examination, you have to visualize the cervix for any positive signs of pregnancy like bluish discoloration and all. Then and feel the adnexal mass and look for cervical motion tenderness. And next is you should get a one UPT done, confirm the pregnancy. But in biochemical investigation, you have to get the beta HCG done. Beta HCG studies is secreted by syncytotrophoblast. It is detected as early as 8 to 10 days post ovulation in normal conception cycles. When you do serial beta HCG, means it keeps on doubles early weeks, and after 7 weeks, the titer will double by 3 to 5 days, and it reaches a maximum by 8 to 10 weeks of gestation. So beta HCG levels are discriminatory values, means if you have a value of 1500 international units, we have to see in transvaginal scan intrauterine pregnancy. So failure to do so, you can suspect the ectopic pregnancy. History, clinical sign, clinical Visual measurements will point
Change
towards
the
finding
slide,
out
please.
ectopic pregnancy. So they are yeah, next slide, please. Shweta, change the slide now. Yeah, next. I've explained this already. So next is we have to see for serum progesterone, not this one, previous one. See next after beta you should see the serum progesterone is not used. Guidelines, you have to give anti-D prophylaxis to all the women who are above 8 weeks and who are undergoing surgical removal or who are having recurrent heavy bleeding and pain abdomen. We have to give anti-D to all the patients. Imaging techniques, yes, this is the thing. Transvaginal sonography is the primary tool for diagnosing the ectopic pregnancy. By 5.5 to 6 week, you have to see intrauterine pregnancy like gestational sac, with placenta minus yolk sac, placenta minus fetal pole, and cardiac activity. If you don't see all these structures, then we have to suspect the ectopic pregnancy. And 1 in 4,000 spontaneous conception can result in heterotopic pregnancy also. You have to check for intradestial sac sign, which may be present as early as 25 weeks of gestation, and the double destial sac sign, which are confirmatory for intrauterine pregnancy. Next is biochemical markers of tubal ectopic pregnancy. Shweta, the chart is there.
1 second. This one, ma'am?
Yeah, this one. Thank you. Coming to biochemical markers of tubal ectopic pregnancy, one is related to the embryo and the one is related to the implantation milieu. Abnormal trophoblast function will have increased beta HCG, hyperglycolated HCG, activinin, follistatin, plasma activated plasma protein A, pregnancy specific beta glycoprotein 1, pregnancy associated plasma protein A, and human placental lactogen, disintegrin and metalloproteinase 12, placental microRNA, alpha fetoprotein, and cell-free fetal DNA. These are all related to abnormal trophoblast function. Abnormal corpus luteal function will have progesterone, estradiol, inhibin A, relaxin, and renin. Angiogenesis will have VEGF factor, placental-like growth factor, and angiopatins. Related to implantation milieu, next chart. Just move the slide, no? No, it's going off. No, back you go. Not that. Okay, let it be. Related to implantation, normal uterine implantation will have leukemia inhibiting factor, glycodin, mucin 1, adenomedullin, and actinin B. Abnormal tubal implantation will have markers of compromised tubal musculature like creatine kinase, smooth muscle, heavy chain myosin, and myoglobin. Markers of inflammation and peritoneal irritation like cytokinins, CA125, and antibodies to C1q. All these are seen. Next slide, please. So the primary or primordial and primary prevention of ectopic pregnancy during IVF is you can lower the risk of ectopic pregnancy with single blast transfer when compared to embryo in an embryo frozen transfer cycle. This approach will lead to better perinatal outcomes and it will increase the pregnancy and birth outcomes. Approximately 2 to 5% of all clinical pregnancy following an IVF embryo transfer are ectopic in nature. So what is the factor which is causing it means injecting the transfer medium directly into the fallopian tubes and reflex expulsion of the embryos into the tubes secondary to uterine contractions. That is the cause. And the thing, and the one what they're telling is the junctional activity of the uterine musculature, especially of stratum subvasculaire, decrease with the increasing time interval from oocyte retrieval. So there is a lower risk of ectopic pregnancy in day 3 transfer as opposed to day 2 transfer. Why means because it reduces the uterine contraction towards the luteal phase. And the incidence of ectopic pregnancy is lower following blastocyst transfer as opposed to previous stage transfer because of reduced retrograde uterine contractions from the cervix to the fundus on day 7 following HCG injection as compared to day 4, first 4 days. And the bigger diameter and integrin expression resulting in the resting stage of the blastocyst. Then next coming to management. Next slide, please. So management depends upon expectant management, medical management, and surgical management. And expectant management is seen when in case of close monitoring is then depending upon the clinical symptoms, serum beta HCG, and transvaginal scan. Next slide, please, Shweta. Yeah. Though when it is indicated in case of expected management, when it is indicated means when the beta HCG levels are low or falling, when she is clinically hemodynamically stable and patient has minimal pain and USG is showing an ectopic mass which is less than 4 centimeter in greatest diameter and it is unruptured and it is non-viable. So you can go for expectant management. So when you should also counsel the patient that there is a need for continuous monitoring and she should be able to follow it up. Then serial beta HCG levels every 48 hours you should do till it begins to fall, and then you have to do weekly until it falls below the 5 international units per liter. So when you have to terminate this expectant management, if patient is complaining of increased abdominal pain or her beta HCG levels are increasing instead of falling, they're increasing, and there are signs of rupture, then you have to terminate the expectant management. And approximately 25% of initially managed expectant patient will go for medical or surgical treatment. Next slide, please. Medical management. Before 1980s, the management was mainly surgical, but with the knowledge of methotrexate, it has changed the treatment of ectopic pregnancy. So now we have to know about methotrexate. What is the advantage of medical management means? It reduces the morbidity arising out of anesthesia and surgery. It is more cost effective. And coming to know about methotrexate. What is methotrexate? It is a folate antagonist that causes deficiency of folate coenzyme tetrahydrofolate, which is essential for the synthesis of RNA and DNA in the rapidly multiplying cells. So it kills the cytotrophoblast, which is gradually reabsorbed and it leaves an intact fallopian tube. According to National Institute of Health and Care Excellence Guidelines, so methotrexate should be the first line of management if it fulfills the following criteria. Like, next slide. So hemodynamically stable patient with no evidence of rupture and a serum beta HCG level between 1,500 international units to 5,000 international units per liter. Minimal pain, no visible intrauterine pregnancy on transvaginal scan, and USG shows absent fetal cardiac activity, and adnexal mass is less than 3.5 centimeters, and hemoperitoneum is less than 100 ml. Then women is capable, is cooperative and willing for regular follow-up, then such patient should be given medical line of treatment. And the mean resolution time is 32 days with a single dose and 58 days following a repeated dose of methotrexate. Dosage. With single dose regimens, methotrexate is given 1 milligram per kg or 50 milligram per meter square intramuscularly on day 1. And she's followed with serum beta HCG level measurement on day 4 and day 7. If her serum beta HCG level is reducing by more than 15%, then you have to do a repeat beta HCG level weekly until it reaches a normal range, that is less than 5 international units per liter. If the level does not drop more than by 15%, then you have to repeat a USG to rule out that whether there is any fetal heart rate seen, because its heart beta HCG levels are not falling and any significant hemoperitoneum is there. Then you have to go give a second dose of methotrexate, that is 50 milligram per meter square or 0.1 milligram per kg body weight you have to give. So success rate of single dose ranges from 65 to 95%. But with 3 to 27% of women will require a second dose. Now coming to multi-dose regime. Multi-dose regime, we have to give methotrexate 1 milligram per kg IM on days 0, 2, 4 and 6 days. You have to give alternatively folic acid 0.1 milligram per kg orally on day 1, 3, 5 and 7. Once again, if serum beta HCG level is dropping more than 15% on day 2, then you will measure the beta HCG level weekly till it reaches below the 5 international units per liter. If the level does not reduce by 15%, then you have to repeat IM methotrexate, that is 1 milligram kg on day 2 and leucovorin 0.3 milligram orally on day 3. So women present, and one of the problem with methotrexate is, see, women may present with pain abdomen even with methotrexate. So you have to admit her for 2-3 days and observe it before going for any surgical treatment, thinking that methotrexate failure has occurred. And next thing is, before starting any treatment methotrexate, we have to do pre-treatment evaluation that consists of CBC, RFT, LFT, blood grouping in all the patients. Adverse effects of methotrexate, which are relatively common, minor and transient, higher with multi-dose regime than with single-dose regime. We see bone marrow depression like severe neutropenia, anemia, thrombocytopenia, elevated liver enzymes, reversible alopecia, dermatitis, and pneumonitis. What are the contraindications to methotrexate treatment? Hemodynamically unstable patient, presence of an intrauterine pregnancy, breastfeeding, non-compliance for follow-up, known sensitivity to methotrexate, chronic liver diseases, pre-existing blood dyscharosis like severe anemia, leukopenia, and thrombocytopenia. Then active pulmonary diseases, immunodeficiency conditions, active peptic ulcer disease, renal dysfunction. Low, I have already explained this patient. Next, surgical treatment. Surgical treatment is indicated in such patients where the serum beta HCG is high, that is more than 5 international units per liter, or when the ectopic pregnancy mass is larger than 4 centimeters and patient is hemodynamically unstable, or in case of failed expectant or medical management, surgery can be performed by laparoscopically or laparotomy. Laparotomy, next slide please. Okay. Laparotomy is advised for hemodynamically unstable patient with ruptured ectopic and massive hemoperitoneum. Types of procedure are salpingectomy and salpingostomy. So salpingectomy is the procedure of choice. How this is selected? This is selected on the damage to the affected tube and the condition of the contralateral, whether we have to go for salpingectomy or salpingostomy. Salpingectomy is the procedure of choice if the contralateral tube is normal, especially if the affected tube looks unhealthy or adherent. Salpingostomy is removal of ectopic pregnancy by making a small cut on the tube. It is the surgery of choice with women with history of previous ectopic pregnancy or which is damaged or unhealthy contralateral tube, previous history of, next slide please. Yeah, previous history of abnormal surgery, a previous PID, and for preservation of fertility. So minimal chances of persistent ectopic pregnancy is seen in this patient of salpingostomy. Next slide. Yeah, results with laparoscopic surgery. Subsequent intrauterine pregnancy is seen in 70% patient. Subsequent tubal patency is seen in 84%, and subsequent ectopic pregnancy is seen in 12%, and persistent trophoblastic tissue is seen in 15% of patients. So laparoscopic, next slide please. So what is the advantages of laparoscopy over laparotomy are? A short operative time is there, lower intraoperative blood loss, a short hospital stay, lower cost, less quantity of analgesia is required, lower rate of adhesion formation, but there is no difference in the subsequent successful pregnancy outcomes. Next slide, please. Salpingocentesis. It is the injection of a substance directly into the gestational sac within the tube, either at laparoscopy or under ultrasound guidance. Various substances are used like methotrexate, potassium chloride, prostaglandins, and hyperosmolar glucose. It is hyperosmolar. Local treatment with methotrexate offers no obvious advantage over systemic treatment. Hyperosmolar glucose like 50% solution appears to be safe and effective when the HCG titers are less than 2,500 international units per liter. Now we are coming to this is about tubal pregnancy. Now coming to non-tubal pregnancy, we have first, I'm talking about cervical pregnancy. It is seen in less than 1% of all ectopic pregnancy. And according to Rubin's ultrasonography criteria, you can diagnose this by all these things. The presence of cervical glands opposite to the site of attachment of the placenta. The cervix should be intimately attached with each other. The placenta should be implanted below the level of peritoneal reflection on the uterine surfaces. The uterine cavity should be devoid of any fetal elements. So other ultrasound features are empty uterus, presence of a barrel-shaped cervix, and absent gliding site. What is absent gliding means? On applying the pressure on the cervix, the gestational sac will slide over the endocervical canal. This goes in the favor of miscarriage rather than the cervical pregnancy. Even though there is an increased blood flow around the gestational sac on Doppler studies. In 20th century, Palman and Macklin proposed additional clinical criteria for diagnosing the cervical pregnancy. What is that means? Painless uterine bleeding following a period of amenorrhea. Means amenorrhea followed by painless uterine bleeding. A soft and enlarged cervix which is equal to or bigger than the size of uterus. And there is an endocervical confinement and attachment of the gestational products there. A closed internal cervical os with a partially open external os. So what is the treatment of cervical pregnancy? If you diagnosed early, you can go for medical treatment with methotrexate, either administered directly into the gestational sac under ultrasound guidance or systemically by intramuscular injection. Even local administration is more effective. But what is the disadvantage of medical treatment is that trophoblast remains in situ causing hemorrhage. Sometimes this may need suction evacuation or uterine artery no, previous slide only. Yeah. Sometimes we may need suction evacuation or uterine artery embolization is preferred. In late cases, the patient may even go for hysterectomy. Next slide, please. Now coming to cesarean scar pregnancy. So here the implant, what is the definition? The implantation of products of conception in a myometrial defect, which is seen at the level of previous uterine incision. It is seen in 1 in 2000 pregnancies. It can occur in the form of potential ongoing pregnancy or in a miscarriage within the scar. There are two types of cesarean scar pregnancy. In first type, the products of conception grow in the uterine cavity and reach a viable age. However, the implantation site may bleed heavily. In second type, the pregnancy grows towards the serosal surface and results in an early uterine rupture, causing a massive hemorrhage. A transvaginal scan along with a transabdominal approach is the first choice of diagnosis. MRI may be helpful in the cases. And the Jarkovi's diagnostic criteria on transvaginal ultrasound include an empty uterus and endocervical canal. Gestational sac will lie anteriorly at the level of internal os. The presence of a thin layer or absence of myometrium between the gestational sac and the bladder. So how you can diagnose cesarean pregnancy means we will have an empty uterus and the endocervical canal will be empty. Gestational sac will be lying anteriorly at the level of internal os, and there will be presence of thin layer or absence of myometrium between the gestational sac and the bladder. And evidence of placenta trophoblastic tissue on circulation on color and pulse Doppler. But here there is no role of measuring serum beta HCG levels. Is not helpful in cesarean scar pregnancy, which is an important point. Now, what is the treatment of cesarean scar pregnancy means? Wedge resection or repair of the implantation site by laparotomy or laparoscopy is often needed, along with medical management with methotrexate. Now, coming to next slide, please. Now, interstitial pregnancy. Definition is here the implantation occurs within the interstitial part of the fallopian tube. It occurs in 1 to 6.3% of all ectopic pregnancy. It has increased risk of rupture, resulting in hemorrhagic shock and maternal death, which is due to high vascularity seen in this area. The following criteria, USG criteria, we can diagnose the interstitial pregnancy. That is empty uterus. The gestational sac is located laterally within the intramural portion of the tube and is surrounded by less than 5 mm of myometrial thickness in all imagining planes. The presence of interstitial line sign means echogenic line that extends from the uterine cavity in the center to the periphery of the interstitial sac. The 3D USG can be used to differentiate a pregnancy implanted in the lateral angles of the uterus from an interstitial pregnancy. On MRI, the corona lies medial to the gestational sac, which is surrounded by the myometrium. The diagnosis is confirmed by visualizing an intact endometrial junction between the uterine cavity and the gestational sac. 2 beta HCG levels 48 hours apart are useful in the decision of management. Now coming to treatment of interstitial pregnancy. Management depends upon clinical presentation, presence of fetal cardiac activity, and serum beta HCG levels. Medical management with methotrexate and surgical management by laparoscopic coronal resection or salpingotomy are effective options. Coronal pregnancy. Next slide, please. It is the extreme rare type. It is seen in 1 in 70,000 pregnancy, and the USG criteria for diagnosis are as follows. A single interstitial portion of the fallopian tube is seen within the uterine body. The visualization of gestational sac surrounded on all sides by the myometrium and is seen separate from the uterus. And when we do the Doppler, the gestational sac is joined to the unicornate uterus by a vascular pedicle. And serial serum beta HCG levels are useful for further management. Now coming to treatment of coronal pregnancy. You have to go for open or laparoscopic excision of the fibrous band that attaches the rudimentary horn to the unicornate uterus with the removal of the rudimentary horn. Laparoscopic technique is safe, but the possibility of associated urinary tract anomalies should be kept in mind. Next, coming to ovarian pregnancy. It is seen in 3% of patients presenting with an ectopic pregnancy. The Spingelberg USG criteria for its diagnosis are as follows. The gestational sac is seen and lies within the ovary. The ovarian ligament connects the gestational sac to the uterus. Histopathological evidence of ovarian tissue from the products retrieved can diagnose the ovarian pregnancy. The ovary along with the gestational sac is seen separate from the ipsilateral tube. And you have to be very carefully see the corpus luteum and the ovarian pregnancy, which can be mistaken for other conditions of ovaries like germ cell tumors and all. You have to do Galler Doppler and confirm the presence of fetal heartbeat within the ovary. And you have to see for negative sliding organ sign. That is the pregnancy cannot be felt separate from the ovary on deep palpation. That is called negative sliding organ sign. So any complex mass, a complex adnexal mass with free fluid in the pelvis, you should suspect the ruptured ovarian pregnancy. So diagnosis is generally confirmed at surgery and made histologically as ovarian pregnancy. And it is usually very difficult to differentiate from germ cell tumors and corpus luteal cyst and other ovarian pathologies. So you have to go for serial serum beta HCG levels, which are useful for further management. Now coming to treatment of ovarian pregnancy. Definitive surgical treatment is laparoscopy. The gestational products can be removed either by enucation or by wedge resection. This should be carried out bluntly to avoid damage to the surrounding ovarian tissue. Electrocautery can be used to achieve the hemostasis. Intramuscular methotrexate is recommended when surgery is at risk or post-operatively in patients with residual trophoblastic disease or with persistently raised beta HCG levels. Oophorectomy is done in cases with a coexisting pathology or when there is excessive bleeding from the ovary. Now next coming to heterotopic pregnancy. So the incidence of heterotopic pregnancy is increasing because of increasing use of exogenous gonadotrophins and artificial reproductive techniques. So it is seen in 1 in 3,900 pregnancies. Heterotopic pregnancies are often missed initially because both will have serum beta HCG level raising and USG can be misleading. So the clinician should suspect a heterotopic pregnancy when a patient complains of persistent pelvic pain along with intrauterine pregnancy. Means a woman present with persistent high levels of serum beta HCG following a miscarriage or medical termination of pregnancy, or when a USG is showing a coexistent intrauterine pregnancy and extrauterine sac pregnancy, confirming the diagnosis. So you have to differentially diagnose with partial or complete mole should be made. Next, treatment of heterotopic pregnancy. Methotrexate should be given orally in case of non-viable intrauterine pregnancy. And if a woman wishes to discontinue the pregnancy or in case she wants to abort the pregnancy, then you can give methotrexate. And local injection of potassium chloride or hyperosmolar glucose with aspiration of the sac contents is also an option for clinically stable women. Laparoscopic surgical removal of ectopic pregnancy is a method of choice for hemodynamically unstable women. Expectant management is an option in heterotopic pregnancy where USG finding is of non-viable pregnancy. Next slide, please. So even after post-treatment with methotrexate, it's important to tell her she has to wait for 3 months before conceiving once again. So what are the methods of contraception you will advise? You can go for combined oral contraceptives, contraceptive vaginal pads, or progesterone-only pill, barrier method condoms, or natural methods of family planning. What is the long-term fertility prospects following an ectopic pregnancy? There is no difference in the fecundity rate or tubal patency and the risk of future tubal ectopic pregnancy with the different types of management methods in the absence of any cause for subfertility or history of tubal pathology. So women with history of subfertility should be managed expectantly and medically to improve the reproductive outcomes as compared to radical surgical treatment. Okay, abdominal pregnancy. One minute. Abdominal pregnancy. This is the implantation of products of conception into the peritoneal cavity, excluding the tubes, ovaries, or interligamentary structures. Implantation may occur anywhere within the omentum, pelvic slide walls, broad ligament, pouch of Douglas, the liver, spleen, bowel, diaphragm, as well as any uterine serosa. It is a rare obstetric complication seen in 1 of 10,000 pregnancies, which is having high maternal and perinatal mortality. There are 2 types of abdominal pregnancy. The primary type, where the pregnancy is implanted into the peritoneal cavity from the beginning, and the secondary type, which is more common. Here, the pregnancy continues its development within the abdominal cavity after the expulsion from the primary origin of implantation. The Studiford's criteria for diagnosing the primary peritoneal pregnancies are as follows. Both the fallopian tubes and ovaries are normal, and there is no history of recent or past pregnancy. The absence of uteroperitoneal fistula and visualization of a pregnancy attached exclusively to the peritoneal surface with elimination of a secondary implantation following a primary implantation elsewhere. Next slide, please. Another classification from the which is important from the point of view of management is early peritoneal pregnancy when the products of conception are less than or equal to 20 weeks, and advanced abdominal pregnancy which is greater than or equal to 20 weeks. The ultrasound criteria given by Gary et al. For the diagnosis of early abdominal pregnancy are an empty uterine cavity, the absence of a complex adnexal mass and a dilated fallopian tube, the presence of a gestational sac surrounded by bowel loops but separated by peritoneum, a wide range of mobility that occurs as a result of pressure with a probe towards the pouch of Douglas, similar to that of a fluctuating sac. So, next slide, please. So, diagnosis is at laparoscopy and by persistently raised serum beta-HCG levels. Advanced abdominal pregnancies will account for 1 in 25,000 pregnancies. It is life-threatening because there is a risk of massive hemorrhage which leads to shock, and there is a very poor fetal outcome. So management depends upon pre-operative arterial embolization along with methotrexate administration, which will reduce the volume of blood loss during surgery and will aid the maximal removal of placental tissue. MRI is useful in confirming the diagnosis and identifying the site of placental attachment. So after all this, we have to go for counseling and psychological support to the women. We have to tell what is the chances of her fertility, her repeat ectopic pregnancy, what is the chances of repeat ectopic pregnancy and chances of fertility, and how she has to take, what all the diet she has to follow, and we have to give the emotional support to her. Thank you, one and all.